Before I begin this video, I want to state for the record that I am not, nor have I ever been, a religious man. I have never attended church, I have never read the Bible, and I don't really seek to. I prefer to focus on the present, and don't value the answers to where we came from, nor do I care where we go after we die. Aside from being a curious idea, I feel we'll never really know the answers to those questions, and quite frankly, I don't think it really matters. With all that said, the idea of religion is a noble one. It's nice. It brings happiness and peace to a lot of people, and who am I to judge if you believe in something that gives you and your life meaning? If it helps you in some way, then pursue it, just as long as you don't use it as a weapon against others, just because they follow a different path, or don't share in your same beliefs. The reason I said all of that is because today's storyline, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills, from 1982, written by Chris Claremont and illustrated by Brent Anderson, revolves completely around religion, and how damaging it can be in the wrong hands, and how one can become completely blinded by it and twist its words. Now, Chris Claremont, a religious man in his own right, wanted to ask several questions when he came up with this storyline. In every war of good versus evil, both sides have called victory in the name of God. But if both sides believe in the same God, which one is truly correct? More so, he wondered what approach would be taken to mutants from the eyes of faith. Because mutants are not human, wouldn't they be considered evil, not one of God's chosen? All these questions and more will be discussed in this storyline, which I have chosen to review today. Let's begin. We start this story in horrifying fashion. Two young mutants, brother and sister, named Mark and Jill, are chased down by a school playground at night by individuals known as purifiers. They shoot Mark, and then before you know it, Jill gets a bullet for good measure too. They hang their bodies on the swing set with signs saying "Mutie," hoping the other children get to see them the next day at school. Thankfully, sometime later, Magneto takes them down. So young, so innocent, to know such terror and pain, their only crime that they had been born, and for all my vaunted power I was unable to save them. No more shall die, but those responsible for this atrocity, whatever the cost, however long it takes, I will hunt them down and make them pay. We then cut to a despicable character I have yet to talk about on this channel, named William Stryker, a hater of all mutants and reverend by profession, who works out of the Stryker building in New York. He leads the worldwide religious movement known as the Stryker Crusade. He then reveals to his secretary his intent to end the X-Men before he goes on a live broadcast. At the X-Mansion, we see that our heroes have gathered to watch ABC News Nighttime, where Professor X and Reverend Stryker are about to have a battle of words. Firstly, Mr. Cheever, mutants per se are not a monolithic group, possessing one set of attitudes or goals. They are individuals, as are we all, and should be treated as such. Now there you go, Charles. These individuals of yours possess some pretty terrifying powers. How are we common folk to defend ourselves against them? After all, Charles, is it fair to even call mutants human? The generic term for them is, I believe, Homo superior, which relates to a different species altogether. The X-Men decide to take out their frustrations in the Danger Room, and Cyclops and Storm, who were off camera waiting for Xavier to finish, fear the broadcast was a losing effort for mutant kind, and that Professor X was destroyed with words. As they leave and make their way through Central Park, they are ambushed by Stryker's men. A sniper fires at Scott and then at Storm, before destroying the car wreckage with a rocket launcher. While the X-Men congratulate each other on a successful Danger Room lesson, Nightcrawler picks up the phone and tells the team the sad news. That was the police. There's been an accident. Professor Xavier, Scott, and Aurora are dead. Wolverine and Colossus inspect the crash site, and Logan says the smells are off, and it wasn't Cyclops, Storm, and Professor X who died. Nightcrawler tells them the car they came in is being watched, and the three of them decide to introduce themselves. The one purifier jams on the acceleration though, and races down the street, intending to kill herself rather than be captured, a coward's way out. Nightcrawler teleports her out of the vehicle, and the mighty Colossus stops it by pulling the engine out. However, more purifiers arrive from the rubble, sporting armored suits, and attack Colossus from behind. Before they can fire the finishing blow, their suits are stripped off them and are made into nice cozy cocoons. It's Magneto, and he wants to be an ally in their fight. Back at the X-Mansion, the X-Men and Magneto begin interrogating the purifiers, hoping to get answers. When Wolverine can't get them talking, Magneto tries his own approach. We then cut to the World Trade Center. Yeah, I know. Professor X is dragged and crucified with powerful religious symbolism, and each of his X-Men, his followers, hurting him in some new way. Nightcrawler takes a bite out of his neck, Ariel, Kitty Pryde, phases through his body and rips out his heart, Wolverine cuts him up, and Storm electrocutes him with a bolt of lightning. Fucked up stuff. It represents Charles Xavier's inner thoughts of letting the X-Men down, and the fact that they have been made in his image in a sense. Is Professor X evil incarnate? Much like God being evil if we are made in his image, and perform the heinous acts we do. The symbolism here is extraordinary. But no, Xavier is just hallucinating, due to the experiments being done on him with various drugs and mind-wash techniques. The man performing the experiment gets a light from the devil himself. Oops, I mean Reverend Stryker. My bad, the resemblance is uncanny. Cyclops and Storm have also been placed in power-nullifying chairs, and they ask him why he feels the need to do all this. Stryker goes on to tell them that 30 years prior, he and his pregnant wife Mercy were in a car crash, and he had to deliver his child in the middle of the Nevada desert. His son turned out to be a mutant, and he decided to kill him with a knife before breaking his wife's neck for creating such a horrifying creature. The car was leaking gas, and he lit a match, only to miraculously survive the explosion. Stryker goes on to explain that he was forcefully discharged from the military and that he prayed for guidance. He believed that the Lord sought to punish him through his monster of a son. His wife Mercy was to blame, and not him, because she was the vessel of creation. Mutants are made in the image of the devil, and not God. He survived the explosion because God doesn't believe he is evil. He saved him from eternal damnation. So basically, this man is a raving lunatic, religious fanatic, and completely delusional. He finishes by calling Charles Xavier an antichrist, and orders his men to kill Kitty Pryde, who had been captured alongside Colossus's sister, Illyana, previously. The purifiers go to kill Kitty while she is sedated in a trunk, but realize the mutant has escaped. They fan out to locate her and are ordered to shoot her on sight. Kitty finds a payphone, remember those, and uses it to call Nightcrawler at the X-Mansion, but the purifiers locate her pretty quick. She then phases into a subway, and a police officer is shot, trying to protect her. The purifiers mean business. They don't fuck around. Thankfully, Magneto arrives to lift up the subway car and destroy all the purifiers' weapons before they can kill anyone else. He removes the bullet from the officer using his powers, and the X-Men, along with Magneto, fly on a piece of the subway magic carpet style, and take the man to the hospital. Reverend Stryker reveals his ultimate plan. Due to the mind-altering drugs and experiments done to Professor X, he has been able to infect him with his religious babble, and has turned him against his allies, the X-Men, and mutant kind altogether. He uses the powers of Xavier to kill Cyclops and Storm, and will then turn him into a weapon targeted at the rest of the world. As workers attempt to take the bodies of Scott and Aurora to the incinerator via elevator, Magneto whooshes it away, and Wolverine tells them they are still alive, just in some form of stasis. Magneto revives them, and states that Charles must have been resisting Stryker's influence, and that he had lowered Cyclops and Storm's metabolic levels, to the point that they appeared dead to all of Stryker's tech. That's the second time they have survived death in this storyline. Will there be a third? Reverend Stryker prepares for a massive sermon at Madison Square Garden, where he has built a machine modeled after Xavier's own Cerebro. He intends to force him to detect and target all mutants as well as potential mutants. Brethren, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. We are beings of divine creation, yet there are those among us whose existence is an affront to that divinity. God created man, the human race. The Bible makes no mention of mutants, so where do they come from? Some so-called scientists, humanists, say they are part of the natural process of evolution. Are we now to let those who put forward the preposition that we are descended from apes tell us that our descendants, our children, will be born monsters, and that this is natural? I say no. I say never. We are as God made us. Any deviation from that sacred template, any mutation, comes not from heaven, but hell. Stryker flips a switch behind his podium, and every mutant close by begins to feel the effects of Professor X's powers. Their ears begin bleeding from the internal hemorrhaging. Magneto enters the arena and confronts Stryker, not being affected by the psionic attacks due to his protective helmet. However, the Reverend refocuses the device and concentrates all the power directly at Magneto, which incapacitates him. Stryker tries to get his followers to finish him off in the name of the Lord. While the X-Men try to make their way to Xavier, one of Stryker's loyal followers' ears begin bleeding. "It is God's will, my child, not my own. I am truly sorry." Yeah, right. Stryker pushes her off the stage and casts her into the abyss, breaking her neck in the process. Cyclops destroys the machine, strengthening Professor X, and proclaims to Colossus and the other X-Men that if they don't stop Stryker now, all the work they've done will be for nothing, and they will simply be delaying another Holocaust. The other X-Men all agree to stay and end this now. They confront Reverend Stryker on stage, and Cyclops lays into him with some words of his own. He asks him what right he has to attack mutants, and what makes his connection to heaven any stronger than his. He continues, stating that their powers and unique gifts are not any different than a physician's, scientists, or athletes that have some sort of mental or physical advantage over him too. He finishes by stating for the record that for all they know, they might be the humans and everyone else the mutants. And we get the most iconic panel from this storyline. Stryker violently pointing at Nightcrawler in denial. How could anyone call something like that human? Kitty tells Stryker that Kurt is much more human than he is, and that despite everything that has happened, at least Nightcrawler has remained peaceful and has chosen to learn instead of resorting to violence. Stryker goes to shoot the X-Men, but is shot instead by a police officer in the crowd. During the epilogue, we see the X-Men, Magneto, and Professor X discussing everything that transpired. Xavier admits that he might have to start doing it Magneto's way, but is talked out of it by Cyclops, knowing he must not desert his students. Magneto leaves, and we see Cyclops and Storm standing outside. She tells him she is proud of him, and they both hope that the world will learn to care for each other and love one another, but unfortunately, it's never that easy. Now I think this goes without saying, but God Loves, Man Kills is one of the greatest X-Men stories ever written. The X-Men themselves have always been a staple of the Marvel Universe. They are the true metaphor of what it means to be an underdog, an outsider, a minority in every sense of the word. They consist of varying different cultures, ethnic backgrounds, sexualities, and religious faiths of all kinds. Despite this, the villain of the storyline, William Stryker, ignores all those differences and even similarities they might share with him in favor of the obvious, the superficial. They are mutants, and that makes them evil. He disregards every other aspect about their existence because his faith has poisoned him and led him down a dark path. If there is a God, then all living creatures, regardless of what they believe or where they come from, are his children. We are all alike, cut from the same cloth. It's this blindness and close-minded nature that makes Reverend Stryker one of the most despicable villains in Marvel history. He is real and cuts close to home. Things like this have happened. People like this exist. The fiction is a horrifying mirror image of real life. Stryker and many of the themes found within this comic were adapted into the 2003 film X2, which in my opinion is still the best X-Men film ever made, at least as of right now, and if you don't count Logan. Stryker and his ideology was a bit more watered down in the film than it was in the comic. It focused on him being a military scientist as opposed to a reverend, but I think it still hits all the major points despite the comic being superior. It just has more of an impact, bringing religion into everything. People like William Stryker that follow the Bible to this extent, letting it control their every action and thought, allowing it to dictate their lives and target others because of it, causing them physical or emotional harm because that individual doesn't share the same beliefs as them or lives a different way, sickens me. Their lives and very existence are a joke. It's pathetic. Instead of learning something new and becoming a better person than they were yesterday, they would rather close that part of their brain off and remain their same terrible self, not changing in any way. One final thing I just have to mention is the title of this comic alone. God loves, man kills. It sends a message. It's powerful and makes an impact. Jumps off the written page and slaps you right in the face, leaving a lasting impression. And the title holds true, because God does love, whether you believe in him or not, and it's man, humans in general, that are cruel, violent, and ignorant creatures. We all dream of a day where people will look at others based off their personalities and the strength of their character, and not the color of their skin, their religious backgrounds or national origins, or their sexualities or gender identity. Someday, some way, we will learn from our juvenile mistakes of the past. Let's hope it's sooner and not later. I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for future content. Let me know what comic book storylines you would like me to take a look at in the future, and I'll get to them when I can. As always, take care of yourselves and see you in the next one.